youth, the poor, immigrants specifically, have different experiences finding opportunity in American society. Is there anyone particularly in need of increased opportunity right now?
Can I say that I think that one of the most troubling findings in the research that we've done is the fact that African Americans, even if they come from middle class backgrounds, have a lot of difficulty maintaining their status in the middle class. More of their children proportionately fall down the ladder than is true of their white counterparts, even when their parents have achieved middle class status. So although I think many of us have hoped that on the wake of the Civil Rights Revolution in the 1960s and so forth, that we would be able to open up opportunities to African Americans so that more of them could achieve the middle class, and more of them are, that this would then propel their children further forward in life. But there is some evidence that that's not occurring at the rate that I think most of us would like to see.
Yeah, I agree. That is the single most troubling finding. It's encouraging that blacks have made so much progress in the United States in the last 30 or 40 years. I mean, we still have discrimination. There's still issues, but enormous progress. I think it'd be challenging to find another group in another time or place that has made as much progress as blacks have, say, since Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. So there is a lot of progress, but this finding that the kids are more likely to slip back is really alarming. We don't understand it. We're hoping we are hoping to do more research on this in the near future, but it is. I agree with Bell. That is an alarming finding.
Are you saying that's because of racism in society, or are there many factors that contribute to that are, pulling these families out of the middle class?
I think
we'd like to study this further because I don't think we understand it. And we have a colleague at Brookings, Julia Isaacs, who's hoping to do some further research on exactly this question, but it calls out for better answers than we have right now.
But my first suspicion would not be racism. I mean, racism, I'm sure, plays some role, but there are many other factors. For example, 7 out of 10 black kids are born outside marriage. We know that makes a big difference. The other half experience, the other 30%, half of them experience a divorce. So you're over 80% of black children spend some time in a single-parent family. And single-parent, their probability of being in poverty is about 5 times as high as if they were a married couple families. So there are probably structural factors as well. A lot of blacks live in areas where jobs have declined quite a bit. That's been researched thoroughly, and most economists who have looked into it think it's at best a small part of the answer. So there could be a lot of small things that add up to this, what is really quite a substantial effect, but we don't understand it very well, that's for sure.
What are some other major barriers to opportunity, Belle?
Well, I think that home environment at an early age is a barrier. I think we don't recognize sufficiently how much goes on in a child's life in the first 3 to 5 years. And that if you are growing up in a home with parents who don't spend a lot of time talking to you and working with you to get you interested in the world around you, whose discipline style might not be totally appropriate, who are hard pressed because they're trying to work and maybe it's a single parent, has very limited time, very limited resources, and that child probably lives in a lousy neighborhood to boot. Mm-hmm. So you put all of those disadvantages in the first 3 to 5 years together, and that child starts school way behind children who've grown up in a more fortunate neighborhood and in a more fortunate kind of family.
So a thing that I think we really need to emphasize here is a number of kids who face multiple barriers. It isn't as if there's one barrier that's a problem for them. Belle mentioned kids who live in the inner city, disproportionately minority, Hispanic or black kids. Well, they live in families that have a lot less money. They live in families that are less stable. They're more likely to live with a single mother. They live in families that move more often. They live in families that are neighborhoods where they're exposed to violence. And they go to the crummiest schools in the country. And we've been singularly unsuccessful in improving those schools to any large degree. So if you have difficulty in your family, big problems in your neighborhood, and go to a lousy school, that's three very important barriers. All three of these factors have been shown to have a real influence on people's development. So it's not much of a wonder that we have this sort of problem. The issue is, how can we help these kids get out of it?
How can we? How can we create better childhood development and better schools and things like that?
Our answer is, you gave it a few minutes ago, is that we would change education, we would change work, and we would change families. Now, let me talk about the most difficult one, which is families. This is the area where unquestionably we have the least evidence. And by the way, social scientists, I would say in the last 30, 35 years, have developed extremely good methods for studying and finding out whether an idea really works. And I think most ideas turn out not to work very well, and we find that out because of the sophisticated methods and the money that we invest in research. So we can find out if these things work. And we have lots of things that we have good evidence in work, and even more in education, that we know that if we invested the money, it would produce results in the long run. We have very solid evidence. This is much less true for families. So let me divide the family thing into two parts. And the first part is people who are not married, especially teenagers. For teenagers, we have lots of evidence from good studies that show that if they are involved in programs that teach them birth control, family planning, and in many cases abstinence as well. I think definitely polls show most parents and kids themselves feel they need to get an abstinence message, but it shouldn't be just an abstinence message. But then a second part of these programs, the ones that are really successful, is that they involve the kids in constructive activities. So they're involved in the community, they tutor, they work at a soup kitchen, they do things that work in parks, they do things that are constructive, so they're involved in constructive activities in their own community. And programs of that type have been shown repeatedly to delay the age at which the kids start having sex, and they're more likely to take precautions, and so they're less likely to get pregnant. And it's a very controversial area, of course, but I think these findings are very reliable. So in this area, if we made more investments, we undoubtedly could reduce the rate of teen pregnancy and delay births. For marriage, though, which is equally important, we don't have very good studies. There's a number that are going on right now. 3 years from now, I think we will have some fairly good evidence about things we can do to help people stay married once they're already married, and to help young couples who are already involved, often live together, say they love each other, say that they hope to be married someday, and they've had a child together. And those couples disproportionately break up. And especially if you meet them at the time of the birth, you'd say, well, they have a chance. They could be together. They're in love with each other. They love the child. They're committed to the child. But for various reasons, a lot having to do with poverty, they don't. So maybe we could help them, and we have a number of experiments going on to determine if we really could help them.
Well, as you said, that is a little bit of a sticky wicket when you get involved in those sort of issues. Who's going to take the lead on this? The government, a community group? Whose responsibility would that be, Belle?
I think it is primarily non-governmental actors and organizations that should take the lead. I think that it is important to send a message to young people that children really need two parents, and it's better if you can possibly do so to have both parents actively involved and to be together when you have to raise a child. But that isn't going to always work, and what I hope doesn't happen is that communities just begin to think, well, single parenthood is the only thing that works, and give up on marriage entirely. That would also be a very bad thing.